Okay, so without any further ado, Karens. What is the deal with the Manchurian Karens? So we will be getting into that as we progress through this episode. But unless you've been living under a rock for the last few days, the latest trending meme during this COVID scam pandemic is all about Karen and Karens. Who are Karens? What are Karens? Why are Karens becoming so prominent in pop culture, I guess, in contemporary times? As I say, it's almost impossible to navigate your newsfeed without coming across a Karen-related meme article or somebody calling out a Karen. And we're also going to be looking a little bit into this. Is there anything to, is this coincidental, and does this coincide with the rise of the amount of people who maybe oppose the official narrative of the scam pandemic that is being put out by the government and the mainstream media? And they are becoming targets for hate-filled abuse on messengers, on news feeds, to even being assaulted in public. Just a couple of weeks back here in Toronto at the lockdown protest, a lady on her way stopped to ask somebody for directions in a car. When the passengers of that car, the driver and her sidekick, which was her daughter, that were both in the car, decided to take it upon themselves to attack the individual for going to the protest. Were they triggered by the response, or the fact that this lady asked if she could, for directions to the protest? Was that what triggered the Karens to behave in the way? So this is just a little search that I did. Karen. Didn't put anything else other than Karen into good old Google. And the reason we're using Google is because they kind of push the suggestive content that they want you to see. So Karens, and as you can see, there are a couple of examples. They kind of have this weird looking haircut that's going on in some sort of bizarre makeup. I don't know. I'm not really a makeup expert at all. But as you can see, this is just what you get from searching Karens. This is what comes up. Look, opinion. A message to you, Karen. Stop your messing around. That's from the Globe and Mail, a Toronto or Canadian-based publication. Karen, the Urban Dictionary. We'll come back to that. What does Karen mean? A slang by dictionary.com. Coronavirus Karen memes are everywhere, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't miss them. Karen is the buzzword, and is Karen the trigger word that triggers the Karens to behave in the way they are. So as you can see, guys, without really going too much down any rabbit holes, you can kind of see Karens know your meme. Now, memes are very, very important in the modern mind control and manipulation. They are a tool of propaganda, and it is the mainstream, not the mainstream media, the social media news feeds, that memes are winning the war in the propaganda of these COVID, during this COVID-19. In some of these memes you may have seen about Jurassic Park. Oh, and they opened Jurassic 5 times. Look what happened then. Oh, and the one about Anne Frank hiding in an attic with 17 people, and they put the square footage of that attic and said, if you think it's hard staying at home, quarantine from COVID, just think of Anne Frank. These are triggered response. This is part of mind control. These are the people who've been stuck at home, in self-isolation, social distancing, probably wearing masks in their house, wearing gloves in their house, putting a gas mask on to take a shit just in case some toxic COVID fumes come out from their rectal passage. And some of them might be boys that are stopping masturbating because they don't want to ejaculate, just in case there is some sperm-laced COVID-19 traces. But Karens are everywhere, as we've just seen. And if we kind of go over and just look at the news section, you can see some of the news articles in and around today and the last week about Karens. So there's the Globe and Mail again, the Insider, how Karen became a stand-in for problematic white women, and a hugely popular meme. As we just said, memes are a tool of propaganda and a tool of mind control, and are memes themselves a trigger? And that is another word we've heard over the last few years, triggered. And that was, of course, the famous triggered lady meme. We'll have a look at her. Maybe I'll edit it in after I've done this recording. recording. So what does Karen mean? Yada yada, very much similar to what you have been seeing before, so let's just click on here. What does it mean to be a Karen? Karens explain. As the meme has become more prominent online, its meaning has become confused with the real-life Karens caught in the crosshairs. That's what I'm saying. There are real-life Karens. There is also always an origin for the stereotype. It is the eye-rolling retort that Karens everywhere have come to know all too well. Okay, Karen. It is their given name, but on the internet, Karen has come to stand for so much more. According to a popular meme, Karen is a middle-aged white woman with an asymmetrical bob asking to speak to the manager, who happens to be as entitled as she is ignorant. Now, is that ignorance part of mind control? A couple of videos I have put out in the past. One recently was what part of hive mind control don't you understand? And these Karens are an example of hive mind control. They kind of think and behave. The haircuts, all of this stuff. Is this part of the program? And I'm suggesting yes, it is, and that's what this video is going to explore. There are these Karens, Manchurian Karens, and are they Manchurian candidates? So we will be looking a little bit into some MK Ultra history and some mind control history, maybe a little bit of brainwashing to try and further explain and understand the phenomenon of Karens. But let's go back to this article. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, so I find it rather annoying, says Karen Gaia, a writer and a podcast. I'd love to listen to one of her podcasts, only for the train wreck effect. And look at that, she lives in my home city now of Toronto. Anything you say, people can be like, okay, well, whatever, Karen. But that's not even how the meme is supposed to be used. It's supposed to be about people who want to speak to the manager, and here they're trying to control the narrative of Karens, right? You can't disobey and break the rules of Karenage. I don't know if Karenage would be a correct verb for this, but you see what I'm trying to get you. Know Your Meme, a wiki-style site that defines internet culture, and this is what I'm talking about, memes. We have a site dedicated for knowing your memes, and we also have people who are professors of memology. So there is a science behind memes, and as I've told you, these are a tool of propaganda, and there are some theories out there that it was memes that won the last election. So anyway, wiki style Know Your Memes added Karen last year as an extension of the Can I Speak to the Manager haircut meme. Born of Black Twitter back in 2014, whenever you want to signal that a character is a Karen, you just toss that haircut on, says the editor-in-chief, Don Cadwan. As you said, they do have a very distinctive haircut. There is an origin to the stereotype, and has this been part of the hive mind control and programming to create an army of Manchurian Karens that are going to play their part in the COVID propaganda machine by going out and starting attacking people for questioning the narrative. Do you see where I'm going with this, ladies and gentlemen? I hope so. But it's more likely a name was chosen for its association with whiteness. Growing up as a kid in the 1990s, I remember people, particularly other black kids, being like, "You don't look like a Karen," recalls Karen Atata, I don't know how to say that, an editor at Washington Post. It was an unspoken thing, but Karen was as white as an older lady's name. Alright, not sure what that means, but anyway, when she was born in 86, the name Karen was in decline, having peaked in the 60s. 2018, there were just 468 baby Karens born. Maybe there might be a resurgence, I don't know. But we're the kind of a rare breed, she said, and here they are kind of going out with a virtual signaling, trying to make people be superheroes when they are really not. I'm Karen, I'm a hero, I'm a crusader for social justice. My haircut is a badge of honor. So, virtual signaling and a little bit about the fear factor behind this, that they are turning fear into a virtue. I actually have someone in my building, it was talking about how, I don't go outside because, I'm not selfish, I'm not stupid, that's why I'm staying inside. No, it's not because of that. It's because you've been brainwashed, darling. You've been stuck inside and you've been mind controlled by the mainstream using MK Ultra tactics. And it is the MK Ultra tactics that we used in the Manchurian programming. So anyway, this goes on and on about Karen. It's not exactly very interesting, but what you can kind of see, if you want to stop and pause this, is Karens are a thing, and they are becoming a thing. So I'm going to have a little article also, one more concerning Karens, and then we will be coming into the sort of more interesting, maybe scientific investigation into this phenomenon and behavioral patterns that is being kind of known as Karen. So see you in the next article. Alrighty, so here we are, and then one last Karen-related article before we get into the nitty-gritty of today's episode. So again, you can't kind of write this shit up. Now, I'm not exactly sure who Mickey Minach are or what sort of publication they are exactly are at all. Maybe they're a lad magazine or something like that. Anyway, this is an article that they put out that kind of started circulating around Monday or Tuesday this week. I saw this various times on my news feeds from various different friends from various different parts of the world. So a woman named Karen complains about the Karen meme, and there she is. That is the epitome of Karenage right there. I mean, I'm not even sure if that's real hair or a wig, but she looks a little bit like a beefeater. The guards that it's not a beefeater, sorry. What are they? The yeoman guards, sorry, that stand outside Buckingham Palace with the hat that is known as a busby. But there she is, Karen in all her glory, with her haircut, glasses, and dangly earrings. It looks like. Don't you just love middle-aged mums who never understand what a meme is or what the purpose is? And I do know some of you out there are middle-aged mums that watch TSP TV and do tune in religiously. But you're some smart middle-aged mums, and some cool mums at that. With some get up to some very fun and healthy family activities. Dora the Horror, about 2 weeks ago. This is a tweet or something that was posted. Don't know anything about Dora the Horror, but there she is, another Karen. See the haircut. She's on a little scooter there. It's probably an electric bike, extra virtual signaling. And this is what it says there. Look, Karen on her way to talk to your manager. Some millennial Gen Z humor has always been a relevant subject in people's everyday conversation. This is what I'm talking about, guys. Just seeing these Karen memes each and every day in your mainstream, not your mainstream, sorry, your social media news feeds. And it's becoming quite a contemporary pop cultural phenomenon. Karen. Excuse me. Every day's conversation, as we were just saying, is relevant subject, and every day's conversation, because it's a lot of older people find it chaotic, messy, or most of the time incomprehensible. And as I said, a lot of us in the Thrift Fam are of a certain age, possibly Gen Xers. Don't even know if we've got one or two boomers in the crowd, but anyway. And what is better example than this lady named Karen, who messaged an admin of a Facebook page named No Karen to complain about the posts they are sharing. And it went like, hello, my name is Karen. I'm messaging you today due to a trend going around referring to demeaning term used to disgrace middle-aged white women. I'm part of a feminist movement, good for you, darling, called recent, she doesn't say it there and I blacked it out. In recent months, I am also doing a story on my page about this, and feel free to come look as to get a better educated on racism and its effects. Now, again, there is a little bit of racial content that they are white women that are mostly Karens. You don't kind of see Asian Karens or black Karens or any other Karens other than white Karens, it would seem. And again, this is not my thoughts or opinions. This is just my thoughts or beliefs, rather. This is just stuff I'm putting out there for further thought and opinion. Is this part of a race war? And we are seeing some shit going on south of the border in the United States. The last 3 days in Minneapolis, as well as a couple of other towns that possibly people are behaving to some kind of trigger as a result of an incident that did take place in Minneapolis just this week. That was a very staged event, guys. Those pictures that you are circulating about making the two police officers responsible for that event heroes, that was the purpose of the photograph, guys. They were set up, staged that photograph. I'm not even sure that the man himself is even murdered. I'm not talking about this because I don't want to get any kind of strikes and things. You should know exactly what I'm talking about, what happened this week, but I believe that was a targeted and staged event. Problem, reaction, solution. They caused the problem to create the reaction of some civil unrest where rioting and looting would ensure, and then throw some agent provocateurs in the mix, get a bit of a movie type set backdrop where you can burn some buildings that are no longer required or due to be demolished anyway for refurbishments or whatever, and add some agent provocateurs, as I said, into the mix, letting off some fireworks, firing gunshots, and sooner or later, humans see, human do. You've got yourself some civil unrest. But anyway, this lady goes on about talking about racism and how degrading it is to refer to people as Karens. And again, she's a feminist, she's anti-racist, so I'm not saying these are bad causes or things, but she's kind of uses them as some kind of virtual signaling in making her into some kind of social justice warrior. So as I said, if you want to kind of stop and see the rest of it, I'm not going to bore you too much, but she continued and continued again, so I will kind of scroll up slowly. You can stop and pause to read Karen's rant as and when you want. So the admin of the page had the best response, a crazy text he wrote back to her. So this is the exchange back and forth between Karens and the admin, and again, up to you if you want to stop and pause it. But Karen wasn't happy with the response and she went off again, and said, up to you if you want to stop and pause these to read at your leisure. But back to this. So it looks like no one is safe from the anger of Karens. Even the anonymous admins of meme page smiles in danger. The top Karen definition on Urban Dictionary gives raisins to kids on Halloween, drives an SUV to carpool her kids to soccer practice, better hope the ref doesn't make a wrong call because she will sue, loves to use Snapagram to post her workout selfies. After a long day of talking to managers and driving her kids around, she sits down with her mum, friends at book club and drinks lots and lots of wine. Oh my god, Karen, do you really have to talk to the Burger King manager every time they forgot to give you ketchup? Lol, yes, I have Facebook and Instasnap to all my friends to make sure everyone knows what to watch out. Okay, so that's a little bit about Karens. I'm not sure what is here. It's always the Karens. This is some tweets or something there, possibly in response to this rant. And again, up to you in your entirety if you want to stop and read these yourself. So Karens. So we will be looking very shortly into the movie and the novel The Manchurian Candidate before looking into, as I said, a little bit of the science and facts behind MK Ultra, mind control and brainwashing, and try and come to the conclusion that is this being used on a widespread, is mainstream and social media the tool and the device for inserting this kind of programming into the minds of people like the Karens who are subjectable to that programming, and then when they hear the trigger responses or the trigger words, they will respond in a certain way of wanting to speak to their manager or throwing coffee over people who are asking for directions to protests about the lockdown. So we'll see you in the next article, guys, very, very shortly. Okay, so what is a Manchurian Candidate? Well, there was a novel in the 50s. It was also made into a movie in 1962 and also again rebooted in 2004 with Denzel Washington about the book in its original, the original novel, and the 1962 movie was about a returning military serviceman that had been a prisoner of war in Korea and come back brainwashed. And it was the Korean War and the prisoners of war that were kind of released at the end of that conflict that led to the research into mind control and brainwashing, because some of them come out as sympathizers to the Korean side of that army conflict, rather than the one that they were sent there to fight against the Koreans, and after being incarcerated in prisoner of war camp, they actually come out sympathizing with them. So what does Manchurian Candidate mean? A Manchurian Candidate is a person, especially a politician, being used as a puppet. See, very interesting there. By an enemy power. Now you have to understand, we are facing an enemy. We are in psychological warfare. The enemy is the New World Order, the elites, the global cabal of bankers, backed up by big pharma and pretty much all wings of mainstream media, entertainment, movies, TV, novelizations, you name it. They control it all, and they are using all of that in their efforts to lead us towards a one world order, one global government, one race, one religion, one currency, chip and pin. There will be those that have in the minority, and those that have not will be in the vast majority, and we will be heading towards a Soylent Green type dystopia under the Agenda 2030 guidelines. But these Manchurian candidates, or in particular the Manchurian Karens, they are playing their part in the war of helping stand against anybody that chooses to stand up against the official narrative, and perhaps somebody who might choose to go to protest against these, or question the narrative and say things like this, it's fake on their social media. Maybe they don't believe the figures of the John Hopkins bullshit-ometer and say so on Facebook or Twitter, and then they will get a backlash of hate in response from Karens. So anyway, is a person, especially a politician, being used as a puppet by an enemy power. The term is commonly used to indicate disloyalty or corruption, wherever international or whether intentional or unintentional. And this is very interesting here, guys, because we're talking about Manchurian Karens, and look what comes up here is suggested content. What's hot? Manchurian candidates, Manchurian Karens. So let's go down there. Okay, boomer. Where does Manchurian Candidate come from? And this is what we do. So the Manchurian, its origins in terms of fiction, and don't forget, guys, fiction does prepare us for the reality. Fiction is how they kind of let us know what they're going to do, kind of relieves a little bit of guilt. Some of you may have seen some of my predictive programming videos in the past that may have been deleted as a result of trying to keep this channel from termination. We have put a couple up in the last couple of weeks. Again, had to do some heavily censoring to get that through uploaded and get past copyright claims and strikes like that. But I am thinking of rebranding it and coming back with a playlist called Fiction Decoded, because I do have a little bit of a knack and eye for decoding your fiction. Fiction is how they prepare the mind, how they subliminally plant things into the public, so when they kind of carry out their psychological operations, it kind of doesn't seem so bizarre or outlandish, right? But anyway, The Manchurian Candidate was a 1959 political thriller by Richard Condon, not Condom, Condon. The book details a conspiracy where a US soldier, Raymond Shaw, is captured during the Korean War and brainwashed by Chinese and Soviet agents. His brainwashing is later activated by the communists to lead Shaw to assassinate a presidential candidate so that his running mate, Senator Leslin, will win. Overwhelming support. Leslin has been put in place by his power broker wife, also Shaw's mother, to install a Chinese communist dictatorship if elected. The highly convoluted plot led a reviewer for Time to suggest the book should be on a list of best bad novels. Not sure what the best bad novels list is too, but very interesting that they talk about installing a Chinese communist dictatorship, because unless you have been completely brainwashed by the mainstream narrative on what they suggest is going on with this lockdown, you will not have failed to have noticed that it's getting a lot North Korea up here in Canada. North Canada, and people do sort of seem to be pointing fingers at China. China, guys, is the red herring. It's the Lee Harvey Oswald. It's the radicalized Islamic terrorists. It's the Timothy McVeigh in a U-Haul patsy. China has no involvement in this. They're just pointing to China. I mean, they may have some involvement within the shadow government, but it was not a biological weapon that was released by the government to infect us all, because no one's getting infected by it, people. That's the thing. So it's the red herring. Stop pointing your fingers at China. This is part of the divide and conquer, build a civil, or further misinformation into the narrative. Point fingers away from the true source of the cause is what I'm trying to say. So anyway, let's get back to it. You've got to understand that is what we are under at the moment. Psychological warfare. This is a psychological operation. The script, or the ingredients rather, to psychological operations are pretty much always the same. But as I said, this novel is very interested in it. That's what they were trying to do back in the 50s. And were they implanting the thought in the seedings to acceptance that maybe that is where we are heading, that they do want a totalitarian communist Chinese style, and China is in fact, although it is the patsy in the pandemic, it is also the model for the one world order, guys, and that is why China is so very prominent in all of our mindsets in news feeds recently, because it kind of that is the implantation subliminally of the way the one world order should roll. Excuse me, there are some people outside making a little bit noise. Anyway, the book did win at least a couple of influential fans, though it was turned into a film directed by John Frankenheimer and starred good old Blue Eyes himself, Frank Sinatra, as Bennett Marco, Shaw's platoon mate who discovers the conspiracy. United Artists, the studio behind the film, was wary about making a movie with such a controversial subject. No, they weren't. They made the movie to implant the thought pattern, the train, the mind control, the seeding, the subliminal messaging. A lot of subliminal messaging, guys, is used in MK Ultra, and that will be possibly what is being used right now to program the Manchurian Karens to behave in the way that they are. Such a controversial subject matter, back to the article. But President Kennedy, who was a friend of Sinatra, appealed to the studio to have the movie made. And we all know what happened to Kennedy. He wanted to stand up against secret societies and evil cabals that are holding us ransom. He also wanted to end the Fed, as well as remove, or not even gotta get involved in the Vietnam conflict. A few days, weeks later, boom, taken out by a guy hiding in the drain system, using a drain, a hole in the curb to allow, for the drainage. That's where he sniped good old JFK back into the left, and his brain splattered all at the back of the car as the cavalcade slowed down to allow the sniper to take his killing shot. But of course, if Kennedy was shot in today's times, he would have probably died of COVID. He died of COVID just before the bullet hit him. But anyway, it was interesting that Kennedy wanted to get this movie. So back to what we were saying, 2004, Jonathan Demme directed another take on the Manchurian Candidate, and this is where it gets very interesting still, people. Starring Denzel Washington as Marco and Liv Schreiber as Shaw. In Dame's version, Shaw is a US representative and vice presidential candidate who can be mind controlled by, see what it is there, nanotechnology. Now, I did a little video a while ago about DARPA and their connections to, or possible connections to, the murder hornets in their research into insect drones in Project Insect Allies in particular. But nanotechnology is something also that big pharma are using in trying to use the medical purpose of it. Helps people with mind, not like memory loss or mental health issues, stuff like that. Mind-related illnesses, and possibly putting these nanobot technology into their brains will help improve their memory. Are they spraying nanotechnology via chemtrails, and are the Karens absorbing these? Are they kind of targeted to hit a certain frequency? Look that video up. There's a lot of stuff in there that could be relevant to mind control under nanotechnology in what we are seeing right now with the Manchurian Karens. The original movie didn't even break even at the box office, but the term Manchurian Candidate soon spread into public consciousness. That's the point of it. And was used to charge a politician in or seeking office with being brainwashed by an outside foreign agent. Henry Kissinger was called a Manchurian Candidate in 75 and in 77. Saran launched an appeal of this guilty verdict in the assassination of Robert Kennedy. Saran's lawyer claimed that Saran was hypnotized and couldn't remember killing Kennedy. This was characterized as the Manchurian Candidate theory. Right, so where there's a theory, there's usually a source, right, of information that caused that theory. The fiction prepares us for the reality, guys. A number of more recent politicians in the US and abroad have been called Manchurian candidates. Oliver Stone called George W. Bush a Manchurian candidate in 2010. Sylvester Stallone suggested in a series of tweets that the president was a Manchurian candidate, but later denied he was referring to Obama. Australian Senator Cory Bernardi called fellow Senator Sam Dastari a Manchurian candidate after Dastari accepted donations from corporations tied to government in China. The investigation into ties between Trump presidential campaign and Russian involvement, Russian collusions, Vladimir Putin, there were some theories about that going around, has also drawn comparisons to the novel and film. The Atlantic, the Huffington Post, Vanity Fair, among others, have all suggested Trump is a Manchurian candidate. Examples of Manchurian candidates. Another guy was, I forget his name, the chap that shot John Lennon. He was John Lennon's biggest fan. Found out where he was in New York, shot him on the doorstep of his home, I believe, and then sat down on the doorstep and read Catcher in the Rye. Another example of a Manchurian candidate under mind control being told to do something. And you remember Yoko and John Lennon there staying in bed for peace. That's actually in Toronto. They rented a hotel here in Toronto and started their loving and wanted to stay in bed for peace. And he was big about peace and love and all that kind of stuff in unity. Although his song Imagine is in fact the anthem for the One World Order. Go and listen to that again in a new light, people. Imagine no people, no religion, no heaven above, yada yada, whoopie whoop, ray-tay-tay. Never thought I'd see the day when Russia put a Manchurian candidate in the White House. And these aren't my thoughts or opinions. These are just examples of Manchurian candidates. I voted. Did you? Got to get the Manchurian candidate out of the driver's seat before we all soaring off a cliff to oblivion. And again, popular now, Karen, Manchurian candidates. Who uses Manchurian candidates? Manchurian candidate is an allusion typically used in political discourse, as the term implies that the public figure is treasonous. Accusing someone of being a Manchurian candidate should not be taken lightly. So are we accusing the Karens of being Manchurian candidate Karens? Well, kind of not necessarily accusing it, but I am suggesting that this could be a possibility as a result of this bizarre behavior and the rise of the Karen meme in social media. And is the Karen meme itself a tool in this propaganda and campaign? Is it a tool of the mind control? Is it a tool of Ultra? Is it used to trigger the Manchurian Karens into action? Let me know what you think in the thoughts below. Note, this is not to be a formal definition of Manchurian candidate like most terms we define on dictionary.com, but it is an informal word summary that hopefully touches upon the key aspects of the meaning and usage of Manchurian candidate. And again, I hope by reading this has given you, the viewer, a little bit more of an understanding of where we are going with this. Okay, guys, so over to the MK Ultra and the mind control stuff, and then we will be wrapping this video up for you. Okie dokie, so MK Ultra, here we are at history.com. This is actually a pretty decent kind of guide of what MK Ultra is all around. So this was put out on August 21st, 2018. And it was originally put out on June 16, 2017. But MK Ultra by history.com editors. No, it's not you, it's your ad blocker. Yeah, I'm using ad blocker and a VPN. So get the fuck out of here with that. We don't need to see that. The Cold War and Project MK Ultra, LSD and Sidney Gottlieb, Operation Midnight Climax, the death of Frank Olson, Ken Casey and other MK Ultra participant church committee. So there's a couple of things that will be possibly covered in this. So here we go. Let's dive straight in, guys, and let's try not to get distracted from this article as we try and speed up this episode a little bit for you. But there is a lot of stuff to kind of absorb, and the purpose of this is to kind of give you as much information and understanding into what a Manchurian candidate is, how MK Ultra works, how MK Ultra is used to mind control, and how we are seeing the rise of the Manchurian Karens, guys. This isn't just about fun and giggles. That is some serious shit behind this, and this might not just necessarily be targeted at the Karens. I do believe that the mind control is rich and ripe and saturating an awful lot of your friends and family, guys, that are believing and buying into the lies on the planned scamdemic COVID-19 2020 global psyop. So anyway, MK Ultra was a top secret CIA project in which the agency conducted hundreds of clandestine experiments, sometimes on an unwitting US citizens. See what I'm saying, guys? Where we're going? Are the Karens unknowing Manchurian Karens, to assess the potential use of LSD and other drugs for mind control, information gatherings, and psychological torture. For information gathering and psychological torture, though Project MK Ultra lasted from 1953 to about 1973, 20 years. Don't think it didn't stop in 1973. They just kind of made it classified, right? They needed to know. They did all their experimentation, found out to utilize it, how to market it, how to possibly use it as a widespread franchising tool that the mainstream are putting into practice in their regular programming. And MK Ultra in the 50s and mind control was around about the same time that TV started becoming very, very popular and widely accessible in households, certainly in North America, and was again hand in hand with the MK Ultra mind control product. And there's a reason they call it television programming, guys. Fiction Decoded, look out for that coming soon. But it was in the 50s that MK Ultra got its origins, and they started looking into it and researching it based on the behavioral patterns and the mental damage or mind control that some of these prisoners of war coming out of the Korean conflict were symptomatic and showing and displaying signs of this. So anyway, details of the illicit program didn't become public until 75. Now, actually up here in Canada, did also carry out some MK Ultra scientific experimentations at a strange, disused kind of, what am I looking for, like mental health asylum type place. But it didn't become public until 75. A congressional investigation into widespread illegal CIA activities within the United States and around the world. The Cold War and Project MK Ultra. In the 50s and 60s, at the height of the Cold War, the United States government feared the Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean agents were using mind control to brainwash US prisoners of war in Korea. In response, Alan Dulles, director of Central Intelligence Agency (CIA), he approved Project MK Ultra in '53. The covert operation was aimed to develop techniques that could be used against Soviet bloc enemies to control human behavior with drugs and other psychological manipulators. If they had social media, maybe those memes would be psychological manipulators. See what I'm saying, guys? There is method in my madness. The program involved more than 150 human experiments involving psychedelic drugs, paralytics, and electroshock therapy. Sometimes the subjects knew they were participating in a study, and here's where it gets creepy, but at other times they had no idea, even when the hallucinogens started taking effect. Now, they kind of put stuff in water sources. Are they putting stuff in food sources that will have hallucinogenic effects, stuff like this, that could help contribute towards mind control? Now, could there be, vegan diets? And a lot of these Karens, believe it or not, are vegans. Is there stuff in this modern fast food branded vegan agenda? And I believe there is. There's a lot of stuff going on with the vegan agenda. We might have to touch upon in another day. But is there something in this food sources that, again, is kind of being used to control the minds of the masses? And again, when you put them into isolation, quarantine, add the added ingredient of fear and uncertainty, they become prime candidates for brainwashing, and maybe some that are of a certain mindset may be subject to become Manchurian Karens and carry on the fight on the street level, kind of becoming the real life living embodiment of the meme. You see what I'm saying, guys? Kind of like Pokemon Go, the augmented reality. They're implanting the mind control on your mainstream media, and you're becoming a real life news feed by behaving like the meme in reality. Hope this is making sense to you guys and you're keeping up with this. But anyway, many of the tests were conducted at universities, hospitals, or in prisons. And again, people who are imprisoned are more susceptible. They're a little bit desperate, a little bit depressed. The mind is a little bit damaged and weak, and therefore sometimes a little bit more susceptible to this program. Most of these took place in between 53 and 64, but it's not clear how many people were involved in the tests. The agency kept notoriously poor records, of course it did, and destroyed most of them. So removing evidence, right? Getting rid of the evidence, clearing the chain that could lead them to a guilty verdict. So they were mostly destroyed in 73. So LSD in Sydney, Gottlieb, I don't know how you say that, but the CI began to experiment with LSD, lysergic acid, I can't read that, fuck me. Anyway, under the direction of the agency chemist and poison expert Sidney Gottlieb, that's the guy, the chemist and the poison expert, he believed the agency could harness the drug's mind-ordering properties for brainwashing or psychological torture. Under the auspices of Project MK Ultra, the CIA began to fund studies at Columbia University, Stanford University. And the Stanford experiment is a very, very interesting documentary. You might look into that again, because that kind of shows a little bit of how mind control can be worked by giving people the illusion of power and giving the people the illusion of imprisonment in something we did a couple of weeks ago about the COVID quarantine camps, and empowering health officials and health workers and giving them kind of deputized classification and the ability to call in any government or law enforcement officials or agencies to come and involuntarily detain people they suspect that might be infected with COVID-19. Scary stuff, guys. You really don't know how deep this rabbit hole of deception really truly goes around this scamdemic. But MK Ultra is also included in experiments with MDMA, ecstasy, and Molly. This is a drug back in the days of the raves in the 80s and 90s, when I was a young teenager, early 20s. Ecstasy was the drug of choice, and a lot of that drug of choice in the rave culture is kind of pivotal into a little bit of what was known as suspended adolescence, where kind of the Gen Xers that were kind of coming out of their teens and hitting their early 20s in adulthood, rather than like their mums and dads and got married and started families and careers and such forth. They started popping ecstasy in like they were candy. In certainly in England, they were putting a lot of methamphetamine up their nose. Speed and ease, famous song by Pulp. We're all sorted for ease and whiz being slang for speed, methamphetamine. But this generation, the Gen Xers, at the end of the 80s, started to party long and hard throughout the nights, weekend after weekend after weekend, right through the 90s. A little bit like the Laurel Canyon Tavistock Institute created, how they created the hippie culture and scene in the 60s. Woodstock, the Doors, Janis Joplin, even the Beatles guys all come out of a think tank designed to control the minds of a young generation. A little bit like now we're seeing the young minds being polluted and corrupted by the likes of Greta Thunberg and the climate cult. But anyway, Molly is a drug that is very, very popular right now, and maybe some of these Karens, when they have their mum's book clubs and they're drinking their wine, they might pop a little bit of Molly. And MDMA, initially, I did used to work pharmaceuticals for over a decade back in the UK before I left, but Molly, ecstasy, MDMA, its original purpose was as a postnatal antidepressant for women. Look it up. But anyway, Operation Midnight Climax, like something you might be Googling on Pornhub. But anyway, Operation Midnight Climax came as an MK Ultra project in which the government employed prostitutes. So there's a little bit of Pornhub type goings on here. And then they lured unsuspecting men, usually government people, lawyers, cops, stuff like that, to CIA sounds. So the CIA set up brothels, employed prostitutes, and then used drugs to brainwash and government officials in order to gain secrets from them. And once they were getting their dick and balls sucked by a little pretty prostitute, I'm pretty sure they were happy to confess all sorts of things. Sex in the honey trap is also something the CIA and other government secret agencies use as tools to get information. Marilyn Monroe, she was one. She got very, very close to the Kennedys, got all the information, and died suspiciously with an awful lot of different semen found in various orifices. Again, something you want to look up if you want for your own. But the CIA dosed the men with LSD, and then while they times drinking cocktails, my goodness, the wind just slammed the door, excuse me there. So they're getting drunk, they're getting loaded, a two-way mirror, they watched from behind, filmed, recorded the stuff, seen the drugs effect. It was a test tank experimentation, and once they were drunk, loaded and high and getting their dick sucked, they confessed all sorts of things. But most of the Operation Midnight Climax experiment took place in San Francisco, in Marin County, California, and in New York. The program had little oversight, and the CIA agents involved admitted that a freewheeling party-like atmosphere prevailed, having fun and games at the taxpayers' expense. When you've got government-issued hookers and drugs on tap, thank you, American population, for your hard-earned labor that is being put to use in this way, guys. Anyway, an agent named George White wrote to Gottlieb in 1971, "Of course, I was a very minor missionary, actually a heretic, but I toiled wholeheartedly in the vineyards because it was fun till Daddy took the LSD away. Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill and cheat, steal, deceive, rape and pillage with the sanction and blessings of the All-Highest?" Interesting stuff, guys. So the death of Frank Olson, he was a scientist who worked in the CIA of 1953 CIA retreat. Olson drank a cocktail that had been secretly spiked with LSD. A few days later, on November 28th. Why is that ringing a bell? Some things happen on November the 28th. Didn't Kennedy die on November 28th? I think he did. My mind's kind of more on this at the minute. I'd have to sort of scratch and scrummage around the back of the subliminal mind to find that myself. But November 28 does seem a synonymous date for some reason. Let me know in the comments below if I'm right on that. But a few days later, in November 28, 1953, Olson tumbled to his death from a window of a New York hotel room in an alleged suicide. Now, something also recently in Russia, doctors were falling out of windows, if you can remember. The family of Frank Olson decided to have a second autopsy performed in 1994, and forensic team found injuries on the body that had likely occurred before the fall. The findings sparked a conspiracy theory that Olson might have been assassinated by the CIA, and probably wouldn't be the first or the last person that was done so. After prolonged legal proceedings, the Olson family was awarded a settlement of $7,500,000 and received a personal apology from Gerald Ford, the president and the CIA at the time, and the CIA director, William Colby. Ken Casey and other MK Ultra participants. Ken Casey, author of the 1962 novel One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We're kind of living in a real life cuckoo's nest right now in modern society. He volunteered for an MK Ultra experiment with LSD while he was a college student at the Stanford University. Casey later went on to promote the drug, hosting LSD-fueled parties he called acid tests. Was he recruiting Manchurian candidates, guys? Acid tests combined drug use with musical performances by bands, including the Grateful Dead, and psychedelic effects such as fluorescent paint, black lights. These parties influenced the that's what I was just talking about, the early development of the hippie culture, and kick-started the 60s psychedelic scene, just like electronic techno music fueled the rave culture of the 1980s and early 90s back in the United Kingdom, and possibly the house parties in around Chicago back in the 80s, mid to late 80s. Other notable people reportedly volunteered for CIA-backed experiments with LSD included Robert Hunter, the Grateful Dead lyricist, and the Unabomber Ted Krasinski, known as, we just said, the Unabomber. Very interested man, and a little bit, I'm not going to say an idol of mine, but certainly someone I find extremely interesting is Ted Krasinski, the Unabomber. You really should look up his manifesto and read it, because it's very, very relevant in today's times. And James Joseph Whitey, the notorious Boston mobster. So the Church Committee in New York in 1974 York Times journalist Seymour Hersh published a story about how the CIA had conducted a non-consensual drug experiment in a legal spying operation on US citizens. His report stated that the lengthy processes of bringing long-suppressed details about MK Ultra to light. The following year, President Ford, in the wake of Watergate scandal and amid growing distrust, and there's even some sort of MK Ultra tactics that were possibly used in the Watergate two-way mirrors, stuff like this, LSD, drugs, hookers, stuff like that. But anyway, amid growing distrust for the US government, and now we also have US, not just US government, Canadian government, United Kingdom government, governments around the world are being distrusted as a result of this pandemic, by more and more people are waking up to the lies. Set up the United States President's Commission on CIA Activities and within the United States to investigate illegal CIA activities, including MK Ultra and other experiments on unsuspecting citizens. The commission was led by Vice President, look at his name, folks, Nelson Rockefeller, and is commonly referred to as the Rockefeller Commission. And we know that the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds are pretty high up in the elite's pyramid. They ain't the top by a long way, but they are the highest up that we will probably ever get to see on the New World Order elites. They are the public face of the shadow government, Illuminati, hiding in the shadows that are pulling the strings, and of all the puppets and Manchurian candidates that are paying their part in this global psyop that is the COVID-19 scammed pandemic. But the Church Committee, held by Idaho Democratic Senator Frank Church, was a larger investigation into the abuses of the CIA, FBI, and other U.S. alphabet agencies during and after the resignation of Richard Nixon. Oh, hold on. I'm recording. These revelations resulted in Ford's 76 executive order on intelligence activities that prohibited the experimentation with drugs on human subjects, with the informed consent in writing and witnessed by a disinterested party of each such human subject. And Edgar Hoover. What's all this? Some stuff. I think we've finished the article there, so there's some little pictures and stuff at the bottom that's kind of relevant to Edgar Hoover, people that were possibly involved in the CIA, LSD, Watergate, other stuff. There's a picture of the rave. I'm guessing that's possibly they're using that for the CIA-controlled psychedelic hippie craze, but that actually looks more like a rave from the 1980s than the 60s. So that's pretty much it, guys, from what we're saying. There's some nice looking drugs there, some marijuana and heroin possibly. CIA drug trafficking, Iran-Contra, they've been up to all sorts of clandestine illegal activities. And here's the brainwashing the massives of unsuspecting citizens into becoming Manchurian candidates, another one of those clandestine illegal operations. Anyway, see you in the next article, guys. Alrighty, so here we are at the Smithsonian magazine website, just to look a little bit into brainwashing. And it says here the true story of brainwashing and how it shaped America. And we're using the Smithsonian because they are a very recognizable institution, and this is an article that they are putting out. This isn't some kind of random conspiracy theorist tinfoil hat type account of brainwashing in America, right? This is from the Smithsonian, which I'm not saying they are a reputable organization, but they are a recognizable organization is what I'm saying. So anyway, a little bit of what we've already been seeing here: the fears of communism during Cold War, the psychological research, pop culture hits, and unethical experiments. And look what we have here. The Manchurian Candidate is used straight away. Jan Frankenheimer's classic The Manchurian Candidate, built upon the idea that brainwashed GIs in Korea. And I can't remember that lady's name, but she almost looks like a 1950s Karen. Manchurian Karen. That almost looks like an upside pyramid there in the middle, with an all-seeing eye. Journalist Edward Hunter was the first to sound the alarm. Brainwashing tactics forced Chinese into ranks of Communist Party, blared his headlines in the Miami Daily News in September 50. The article later in a book, and then in an article he later put it into a book. Hunter described how Mao Zedong's Red Army used a terrifying ancient techniques to turn the Chinese people into mindless communist automations. This is what the Karens, the Manchurian Karens, are being turned into. I can't read that word. Automatones. Yeah, forget it, give it up, TSP. Anyway, you know what it's saying. You're reading it yourself. You're smart. You can make it out. He called the hypnotic process brainwash. In a word-for-word translation from Zhao Now, the Mandarin words for wash and brain, and warned about the dangerous applications it could have. The process was meant to change mind radically, so its owner became a living puppet, a human robot, without the atrocity of being visible from the outside. It wasn't the first time fears of communists and mind control had seeped into the American public. In 1946, U.S. Chamber of Commerce was so worried about the spread of communism, it proposed removing liberals, socialists, and communists from places like schools, libraries, newspapers, entertainment. Hunter's inflammatory rhetoric didn't immediately have a huge impact until 3 years into the Korean War, when American prisoners of war began confessing outlandish crimes. When he was shot down over Korea and captured in 1952, Colonel Frank Schwabel was the highest-ranking military officer to meet that fate, and in February 1953, another prisoners of war had falsely confessed to using germ warfare against the Koreans. Now, I don't know if they falsely confessed to it, or if maybe that was the excuse we were given, and they were sort of deliberately using it, and they were, oh yeah, no, they were mind controlled. Yeah, oh my God, those terrible Koreans mind controlled them to say that. We didn't do anything like that. We fought fairly. You know what I'm saying, guys? Remember 9/11? Was anything about that fair? But anyway, the Americans were shocked and grew even more so, and 5,000 of the 7,200 either petitioned the US government to end the war or signed confessions of their alleged crimes. The final blow came when 21 American soldiers refused reparation. Suddenly, the threat of brainwashing was very real, and it was everywhere. The US military denied the charges made in the soldiers' confessions, but couldn't explain how they had been coerced to make them. What could explain the behavior of the soldiers behind brainwashing, unless the brainwashing was a lie, they were telling the truth. But brainwashing, again, does exist, and some of these tactics are what we're looking at. So I don't think we're going to possibly read all of this article, because it might be a little bit long, and I'm looking at it, it is. But the basic problem is that brainwashing is designed to address is the question, why would anyone become a communist, said Timothy Melly, professor of English at Miami University and author of The Covert Spear, Secrecy, Fiction, and the National Security State. Brainwashing is a story that we tell to explain something we can't otherwise explain. And that is true. Are we kind of using brainwashing to explain the phenomenon of Manchurian Karens? The term had multiple definitions that changed depending on who used it. For Hunter, who turned out to be an agent in the CIA's propaganda wing, it was a mystical Oriental practice that couldn't be understood or anticipated by the West. Melly says, but for scientists who actually studied the American POWs once they returned from Korea, brainwashing was altogether less mysterious than readily apparent outcome. These men had been tortured. So people kind of are undergoing a little bit of torturous conditions by being self-isolated and quarantined, social distance, and being stayed at home listening to fear-mongering propaganda about the COVID-19. So again, there's some Nazi war crimes in Operation Paperclip. This was something that took place after World War II, when the best Nazi scientists were cherry-picked by the Allied forces, who were victorious at the end of that global conflict. They brought the Nazis into their wing, give them new identities, and put them to work. Can't beat them, join them, or you beat them, make them join you. And there's a lot of belief that part of the paperclip research and the scientists that were rounded up at the end of that conflict were indeed used to implement some of the MK Ultra mind control projects that did get put into place in the 50s up until the 70s in the United States. So as I said, guys, there's a lot of stuff in this. This is the Manchurian Candidate open scene. We're not going to play it. That possibly could get us a copyright strike. So as I said, this is a pretty long article. I'm going to go down to the bottom, and you can kind of stop and start it to read it for your light. And Zoolander, yeah, that was another movie in recent years that kind of put the Manchurian Candidate into the mind of the masses through popular media outlets such as the movie. And again, the Zoolander is being programmed just along with the Manchurian Candidate, the Manchurian Karens, sorry. So anyway, that was the bottom of that article, and there are some responses at the bottom here. Again, if you want to stop and pause, you can. So as I said, brainwashing was something that came very much to light in the 1950s, and MK Ultra was a project the CIA openly carried out through the 50s to 73, and then quite possibly still carrying it out to this day, but in clandestine and a much greater widespread. Okay, so one last article we are going to finish up, guys. Alrighty, so brainwashing techniques you encounter every day and how to avoid them. This is from Life Hacker. Oh, 1 second. All right, there we go. Let's give you a full screen now. So how to avoid them. Let's go down. While it's pretty unlikely that you're a target of deliberate brainwashing, although it's probably very likely some of these Manchurian Karens are the target of deliberate brainwashing. But anyway, it's likely that you are subjected to some of the common techniques associated with the less than ethical practice. Here are a few common methods you encounter on a regular basis and what you can do to avoid them. Don't know who this guy is. He's talking about cheapest iPhones, I think. First things first. What is brainwashing exactly? Wikipedia offers a concise definition. Mind control, also known as brainwashing, coercive persuasion, mind abuse, thought control, or thought reform, refers to a process in which a group or an individual is systematically uses unethical manipulative methods to persuade others to conform to the wishes of the manipulators. That's sunk in, I hope, guys, and you understand right away. This is what is being used to control the Manchurian candidates. No two ways about it. Maybe, we are getting a bit out there suggesting that they are being programmed to behave that way, but I don't think so. So anyway, as you can see there, let's just read that little part one again. To brainwash, to target a targeted group or individual that have been targeted for brainwash will be systematically subjected to unethical, manipulative methods to persuade them to conform with the wishes of the manipulator. And the wishes of the manipulators right now are for us to stay home, social distance, wear masks, wear gloves, watch the mainstream news, order their HEK293 laden junk food from KFC, McDonald's and Pizza Hut, and get Uber Eats and skip the dishes to deliver it right to your doorstep. So those mind reducing, brain eating foods will make you dumber and dumber and more susceptible to the brainwashing. But anyway, we get back to this. Basically, it's an extreme manipulation. We often associate to the practice with cults and don't consider its presence in everyday life. Yet there are techniques used in brainwashing are frequently leveraged by advertisers, and advertising is as well the guise in how cell phones are legally allowed to track you by saying, oh, we're just doing it to target you. You know, if you sort of spend time in a particular neighborhood, maybe there are businesses of interest to you there. Anyway, that's something for another day perhaps. But anyway, advertisers use brainwashing as well as politicians, non-profit organizations. It is everywhere, folks, and propaganda in itself is a form of brainwashing. They use propaganda to sell you the idea, and they use imagery and messages to control the mind into accepting the propaganda. But Alex's long writing for hacking blog NoBite provides an outline of some of the most common brainwashing techniques, and here are some of the most notable coming right up for you guys. The manipulator offers you a number of choices, but the choices all lead to the same conclusion. The same idea or phrase is frequently repeated to make sure it sticks in your brain. Social distance, self-quarantine, social distance, social distance, social distance, self-isolation, hand sanitizer, toilet paper, soap. All these things have been repeated over and over and over again on a daily basis, minute to minute, hour to hour on mainstream news. Intense intelligence dampening is performed by providing you with constant short snippets of information, memes, on various subjects. This trains you to have a short memory, ADD. Why YouTube wants you to make videos that are 1 to 5 minutes long. Don't make anything longer than that. That's because it creates the short attention span. That's why I put long intros. That's why I put long videos. Keeps those people away. We don't want these short memory types. We want wide awake alert minds watching this stuff. So the amount of information you're getting is overwhelming, just like what we're seeing every day, hour to hour, minute to minute, 24/7. The narrative of the planned scam-demic is overwhelming. We don't know where to look, what to believe. One thing contradicts another. It's misinformation after misinformation that is just contributing to the manipulation and mind control of the masses, guys. So anyway, the more information you feel, you will be overwhelmed, and the answers provided by the manipulator to be highly desired due to how overwhelmed you feel. So make you desperate, and then you'll be sort of willing to accept anything. That's an interesting text message. But anyway, emotional manipulation, again, the social justice warriors, the virtue signaling. This is kind of where we're going there. This is used to put you in a heightened state. It makes you feel harder to employ logic, including fear and anger are among the most popular manipulated emotions. So they're fearful of the COVID-19, so afraid they're staying at home and social isolating. But they are terrified at people and angry at people that disagree with them and disobey the rules and regulations about social distancing, yada yada, woobly woo, ray-tay-tay. See what I'm saying, guys? Hopefully this is making sense to you and you're starting to see the matrix as I am seeing the matrix. How to manipulate people. There are times when your life when people don't give you what you want, but you don't have to settle. Another article for another day perhaps. So we're going to try and keep this a little bit more brief if we can. Is there more to read? When reading this, you're likely to think of a few examples of these techniques. News channels, politicians, political parties often repeat a constant message when they want to get their point across. Propaganda, folks. Short snippets of information is also a common tactic on news networks. Advertisers love to offer choices that all lead to their product, fad diet, stuff like this. And emotional manipulation, sad music, upsetting scenes, children, animals suffering, this kind of stuff is all used to pull at the emotional heartstrings and control the minds. It is common in people you'll encounter, as well as most forms of media, even seemingly and sometimes actually harmless films like film. No, film isn't harmless. We told you, people, reality, fiction prepares us for the reality. We're going to be looking at some fiction decoded. Trust me, guys, it's going to be fun. Hopefully you'll look forward to seeing some of those. Harmless mediums like film. These techniques are everywhere, and they aren't turning you into a zombie. No, they aren't. Again, they're trying to convince you. Don't worry about it. They're not turning you into a zombie. They just got your best interest at heart. They just want you to think in the right and correct way. But they are informing you of many of your choices, and this is a little bit, all this kind of propaganda and mind control is removing independent thought, critical thinking, and choice, and the Manchurian candidates are part of a hive mind as a result of this mind control brainwashing. How to avoid brainwashing techniques. Again, turn off the mainstream media for one. Limit your time on social media for two. Avoiding brainwashing techniques often involves avoiding brainwashers themselves, what I'm telling you, but this is next to impossible. Taking advertising an example, you can't avoid them all, and attempting to do so is going to be rather expensive. If you still don't want to watch television and movies, your best bet is to cut what you can, and when you can, seek balance. Finding balance is often easiest, and simply providing yourself with the information you need. All you need to do is the following: identify the manipulative message you've received. Social distance, self-isolation, flatten the curve. What part of stay the fuck home don't you understand? Hand sanitizer, toilet paper, soap. All part of the manipulative message that I believe is the brainwashing tool, and it is causing the Manchurian candidates, Manchurian Karens, sorry guys. Find an opposing message. I'm the opposing message right now for you, whether it's manipulative or not. Also attempt to find the most neutral and unbiased account of that same message. Some pretty good advice. Compare your different sources and decide how you'll feel. Brainwashing, whether mild or extreme, is possible in a larger part due to isolation. If you only hear the brainwashed message on a regular basis and rarely or never expose yourself to alternatives, you're going to be far more likely to accept what you hear without thinking, guys. It's your fucking smoking gun. If you want to avoid the brainwashing techniques discussed in this post, your best bet is to surround yourself with a spectrum of information. TSP TV is that spectrum of information. Embrace yourself in the thrift store. Check out my playlists. There's a lot of stuff that is going to fuel your mind a lot better than the narrative of mainstream that is designed to brainwash and null your mind into believing everything you hear, everything you see, and convince you the sky is falling and you need to stay in the cave to be safe. Chicken Little folks, you know how that ended up for the farmyard animals. So as I say, guys, I am offering you at TSP TV a spectrum of information, and dare I say, some attempts at entertainment for your enjoyment and to distract you from this bullshit narrative that is controlling the minds of the masses and is creating Manchurian Karens. So that's it, guys. Let me know if you have any thoughts and opinions regarding Manchurian Karens in the comments below. And until the next shit video production, take care and remember to be excellent to each other. See you soon.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.